Whether you're at the base of your own personal Everest, navigating the twists and turns of your career, or simply seeking inspiration to keep climbing, join us as we embark on a shared expedition of growth, learning, and triumph, where every step forward is a victory and every story shared is a beacon of hope. I'm your host, David, and together, let's ascend to new heights. Welcome to the Climbing the Ladder podcast. We are episode 2 of Climbing the Ladder podcast. Last week we spoke to Frank Ball, an ex-military helicopter pilot. This week we have professional baseball player turned automotive detailer, Anthony Lerew. Anthony, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me, David.
Yeah. We've been friends for quite a while, and when I started this, you were one of the guys that was up on the top of the list to get the story straight because we've had some adventures. When I first met you, you were in some of your wilder years coming into spring training, and it's been a ride ever since. Yeah. We have a very similar story.
Yeah. I was definitely off the rails, just living for myself and no cares in the world, young and dumb.
That's the key word right there.
Yeah.
Single and professional athlete, we got into quite some trouble, I'm sure.
Yeah.
As you can see, whoever's watching on video, we are here in my shop in East Tennessee called Finishing Touch. And Anthony and myself kind of have a very similar story with much different paths. I wasn't in the hospital as much, I don't think. So yeah. We're going to get into that story right now. But let's talk baseball and how we started. Because that's pretty much how both of our lives kind of took over from probably 10 years old all the way up until professional baseball. Let's start there and how that dream kind of took off.
Yeah, I mean, ever since I can remember, I've always played baseball. It was something that I grew up doing. I loved to be outside, loved to play outside, which I don't think a lot of kids do nowadays.
Yeah, I think my parents forced me to be outside.
Yeah, it was basically like, you come in whenever it got dark out, and like that was it. You were outside the rest of the time.
You better be home when the street lights come on.
Yeah, so. But we didn't have TV. We had like the antenna on top roof.
Well, dang, I'm not that old, but we'll get there.
Thanks. But yeah, T-ball is where it started. Had a Tony's Pizza bat. My dad, didn't grow up with very much money, but mom and dad worked hard and cut out all the coupons off the Tony's Pizza boxes, and you can mail them in, and they'd send you a bat. So my bat for a while was a Tony's Pizza bat.
Yeah, and we were actually talking yesterday. So so for those of you that don't know Anthony, he's played with the Atlanta Braves and the Kansas City Royals, and also internationally in Korea in the professional leagues.
Yeah, Japan and Korea.
But pitching wasn't your main thing. You said you thought you were going to be an outfielder. Yeah,
so outfielder, hitter, and then that all kind of changed whenever I broke my forearm, my like junior summer ball, so Legion ball, and then they put a pad on it for football season. And I went to stiff arm somebody week 1 and broke my wrist because the pad didn't let my wrist bend back. So played 4 weeks with it broke because they told me it was sprained. It just so happened to be this little bone in your wrist that if they have to pin it, then you might not ever be able to throw again. So. And
were you being scouted at that point, at that time in your life, or was baseball kind of like an extracurricular, or was it something serious? You were like, I could do this for a living?
No, sports were my outlet. So it was I'd get up at 5 a.m, go to school, and I would lift with the football coach's brother, who was the shop teacher, and so we'd lift. He kind of set me up on good workout routines and stuff like that at a young age, and then after school, I was basically sticking around watching the sports if I wasn't playing. But I was a 3-sport athlete until 10th grade. Then I just started focusing on football and baseball.
Very similar. Unfortunately, baseball kind of took over my life when I was about 14. I started playing a year ahead and realized I had a little bit more arm strength than the rest of the kids I was playing with. So pitching became my priority for my entire baseball career. And in Canada, we play wood bat league, so it's very much like professional baseball where pitchers don't hit. That's what you do. So
yeah.
my last AB, other than when I ended up in the Braves for one season, was I think I was 14 years old.
Oh wow!
And then from then on, it was I'm going to run when I'm not pitching, and I'm going to pitch when I'm not running, and that was my life. So
Yeah. Did you miss the hitting part though? I feel like that's like one of the best
I did,
parts.
but I wasn't the size I am now. So I wasn't that power hitter. It wasn't fun for me. I would get on base. I was slow. Like I'm not really fast. I'm 6 foot, 6 foot, not very quick down the line. So
Yeah.
it wasn't anything that I was upset about because I was throwing. I think I was 82 or so when I was 14, and that was gas at that age.
Yeah.
So I had more fun being successful doing that than going 1 for 4 in my hitting career.
Yeah, I was blessed with being kind of the same size that I am now. Only like instead of 240 to 109 pounds, but I was like 6'3".
Yeah.
My freshman year probably. So that was good, and to have that mentor type football coach's brother and those kind of guys kind of pour into me at that age was huge. I wasn't out running around doing stuff. And like I said, sports was my outlet. So I love to do it, and I love the camaraderie it brings. Football, quarterback, free safety, punter, kicker. You know what I mean? It was like one of those things where
all the athletic positions, it was kind of came naturally, and it was something that you were pretty good at.
Yeah, I was definitely. It's a God-given talent to be able to do some of that stuff. Now, when it comes to other stuff like business stuff, which we'll get into, I'm not very blessed at that. But when I tell people like, how do you do that? They're like, well, I can't throw a baseball like 95 to 99, but I can do this. And it's like, oh, that makes sense. Like, I'm not built that way.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes things just come naturally. Even just business stuff. Some people are just naturally like the way their brain works. Mm-hmm. It just clicks, and some people really have to work at that or research stuff. And thankfully, I was blessed with that. Is I notice things a lot more than a lot of people I've noticed other people come into contact with, and it's just something that I've built. Like what we're sitting in now is what we kind of talked about it last week with Frank. Is this shop started from basically nothing. Like mm-hmm. I came up with some pretty good money. My parents were pretty well off, but something like this was never the issue. I don't know if you guys can hear in the background, but it is absolutely pouring outside.
Yeah, it
right
has
now.
Been raining for the last 2 days here in Tennessee, and it is dumping.
Yeah, we don't have an audio studio, so you're hearing whatever is outside right now.
Yeah,
but it is coming down. So we'll turn the mics down a little bit. All right, we had a small pause there for the rain outside. It was getting pretty heavy.
Yeah, it was incredible.
We left off with kind of my backstory. What we talked about last week is. My parents were pretty well off when I was coming up through baseball, so I didn't really have that struggle for bats and coupons and stuff like that to get stuff you really needed. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that for a bit. How was it getting equipment? And you were a natural athlete, but athletes aren't that well off when they don't have stuff to use. So how did that come about?
Well, I mean, I've actually gotten time to play winter ball in Puerto Rico and Venezuela, and I mean, everybody knows a lot of good baseball players come out of there, and the equipment doesn't make you who you are, and you see it more and more nowadays. Like everybody wants the best stuff, and they don't put in the work, and it's like it doesn't matter how good of stuff you have. Like they had 2 baseballs in Venezuela when I spoke at this one place that I went to. They had 1 glove, and they would share, and they didn't have shoes. But that's what they would do all day, every day.
And that's mind-boggling to people that grew up in Canada and first world countries. Basically, that's just not imaginable. Like if we were playing baseball in bare feet on dirt, we'd be crying all the way home, and I don't think I could handle it.
Yeah, you wouldn't do it. You know what I mean?
This is no fun.
Yeah, but it's the normal for them, you know, and it's and that's why they become so good. It's their way to get out of that environment, you know?
Yeah.
And for me, it was a way for me to kind of have a different life than what I had. But just everybody kind of knows when you're that person, like I said, the equipment doesn't make you. So I didn't have the money to go to camps or play on travel ball teams or anything like that. Anything I did was free. You know, I played for the school, Legion ball,
wherever you could get field time, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. And like I said, I was always outside. There was farmland, and when they would, so to the right of my house was a cornfield, to the back was soybean field, and they would like rotate the crops. But whenever they would plow them, bring up all these rocks. And I would just go back there with this old wood baseball bat and throw rocks up and crush them all day long. and like put myself in situations. I mean, that was back when I was fans of the Phillies and the Braves, but it was like Lenny Dykstra, John Kruk, the Darren Dalton mullet.
Well, you say so.
I mean?
Stories like that make. So let's talk about the rookie. Is a high school teacher throwing balls into a net when he was 45 years old, and he didn't know. He had no idea.
Yeah.
Get him on a radar gun. He's 100 miles an hour.
And he didn't go anywhere or go to any clinics or anything like that. Like, if you're good, people will find you.
You could be in the middle of nowhere. The talk of the town will be the buzz, and somebody will find you. You don't have to go to camps. You don't have to go to tryouts, all that stuff. If you're good enough, somebody will find you. And that's one thing I find growing up in baseball is off season. I would do camps like any other professional baseball player would, is teach little kids.
Yeah.
The little kids weren't the problem that I saw growing up. It was the parents be like, my kid's the best. Make sure he's the best. And you could see that, like, you'll talk to the kid in camp because the parents aren't right beside them, and they'll be like, I don't want to do this. This is too hard. It's too much pressure. Yep. And they can't be kids coming up like that.
I mean, for me, whenever I coach kids, it's more helping them with their mentality, because you're going to fail. It's how you come back from failing. But also to have fun. You know what I mean? Like,
that's the big one.
I think a lot of times, sometimes parents and they want their kids to succeed so much in something, or, let's just say baseball, because that's what we're talking about, that they push it on them, and the kids aren't having fun. You know what I mean? Kids are supposed to have fun.
And you get at the opposite side, those kids that are in public school or regular school, their teachers are being like, you need to focus on school because baseball's impossible. Like, you'll never make it, and your parents are like, you could do this.
Yeah.
So it's just pulling everybody in different directions.
Also, like, I don't really do lessons or anything like that because of that reason. Like, unless the kid's like in college and needs some help, or he's like a senior and comes to me for some help, but like, I'm not going to be charging like $100 for a half hour to throw your kid BP and like, or to like help him with some mechanics on the mound. Like, at 11 years old. Like, if your kid's throwing 68 at 11, that means nothing to me.
Yeah.
Like, and we'll just say little Johnny, because we're talking about little Johnny.
And they'll be successful at that age because they're so far developed for where they're at. But I've played with plenty of guys coming up, or there will be guys better than me at 9 years old. And by the time we hit 13, 14 and get into like travel ball or higher level baseball, they're just another duck on the pond. And that's kind of how my professional career ended up, and we spoke about this a couple of days ago, was I was told I was going to go make the big leagues from day one. I was always successful coming up through college, my first year of pro ball. So I had in my head, well, I don't have to work at this. It's all natural. Mm-hmm. And by that time, it's too late. You finally get to that one level where you're on a level playing field, and then it's too late to improve then.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a lifestyle, and you have to make a lot of sacrifices, but that's whenever it becomes your job. You know what I mean? An 11-year-old doesn't need to have a job like that.
No, have fun.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and you should play all the different sports. Be well-rounded. Be open-minded because you learn so much from other sports, like football. Like, if you only play baseball, you can kind of be a turd. But if you do that in football, you're gonna get laid out, and you'll be like, oh, I can't like do that. Like, so you learn some. I mean, at least I did. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I know for me, football, and it was just different back then. Football coaches, like my one football coach, headbutted a dude with a helmet on because he said something like that he shouldn't have said.
Well, that's what I noticed coming up in our childhood. Kind of that era was. Nowadays, you can't yell at kids. You can't tell them what to do. It's if you want to go run because you did this, you don't have to if you don't want to. No, it was like. You're going to run in barefoot in the hot parking lot in 100-degree weather, so you don't do it again. Yeah, and you don't see that anymore.
Yeah, if you embarrass coaches on a Friday night under the lights, like that whole next week of practice, you're doing like crab walks up this hill, like the whole entire practice.
It's a military mindset is the best way I can describe it.
Well, and it's one of those things that you're like, well, I don't want to do that again. I better get better.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's progress through suffering, I guess.
Yeah. So professional baseball, when did other sports kind of take a back seat and you were like, oh, this is could be a job now. I need to take this seriously and kind of cut out everything else?
I mean, I still am. Like, I'm just not, I don't like really think too much. Like, I'm pretty dumb actually. So I was going to say I'm not dumb. I'm pretty dumb when it comes to stuff like that. Like, I'm kind of like, when I was playing sports, I really love football. So I actually signed to go to Penn State, went on a recruit there for football, and met with Joe Paterno, and he was like, I don't want my quarterback playing baseball. Like, if you're going to be a quarterback.
Wait, you were coming in for a quarterback? Not
Well,
like
like
linebacker or anything? You're a big dude.
No,
that's
it
a big
was-
quarterback.
Yeah, it was quarterback, and then he was like, well, my quarterback is only good because he wants you to know the plays in and out.
Yeah.
Like, he can't be sidetracked with baseball as well. Fortunately, I was all-state punter too, so they don't give full scholarships for baseball. My parents weren't going to be able to afford to send me to Penn State, so I actually ended up getting a half ride for football to punt, and then a half ride for baseball.
So you found a way to make it work when kind of coming up through the childhood, no bat, no shoes, stuff like that. Is you made it work to do what you wanted to do.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I knew I didn't want to do school. You know what I mean? So
I don't think any of us did. I think everybody in professional baseball were all C students.
yeah, but like it was like, well, if I can get school paid for and I can do what I'm doing basically in high school here, which is play both sports that I love to play, like play the outfield, come in and pitch every now and again, and then play football. Like, I mean, I was like, okay, that's cool.
And that kind of kept you in shape all year round too, because they're all different times of the year.
And throwing a football is really good for your arm. Like Nolan Ryan threw a football.
Yeah.
The dude threw how many innings at like 100 mile an hour?
Yeah. Well, was it when he got hurt? His last pitch was 99 or 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
I mean, but he's that like 1%er.
Yeah.
But his work ethic, and he was tough. You know, he never felt 100%.
Yeah.
You know, so it was reading stuff about him doing that, and you know, I always noticed that it was throwing a football is easier on your arm. You can literally have Tommy John and still throw a football.
That's wild.
Because
I didn't think about it like that.
You can. It's a whole different
motion.
action.
Yeah.
Yep. So ended up getting drafted by the Braves as a pitcher. I said it was going to be outfield and all that, but
is that something they talked to you about before the draft? Like, we want you to pitch, we don't want you to play outfield, or were you just already in the pitching aspect of it before the draft?
No, I thought I was going to get drafted as like a hitter or outfielder, but because of breaking my wrist my senior year, I didn't really play that much.
Kind of too big of a risk for them to take.
Yeah, well, I played 4 weeks with my wrist broken because they said it was sprained, and then it was the navicular wrist in your bone, in your wrist. Yeah. It's like kidney shaped. It gets blood from one end and the other end, and I broke it right in the middle. So I had this bone stimulator, and it took 16 weeks for it to heal.
That's pretty wild for a break.
Yeah. So my senior year was kind of like I didn't do much, and then it was like a big question mark. Can he swing a bat? Like, how's it going to hold up type thing? And then so the draft came around, and it was like, I just got drafted as a pitcher. Like,
guess I'm doing that now.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, it was the Atlanta Braves too, which I was fans of them. So it was a really good day. It was actually the day I graduated high school too.
Well, you're from Pennsylvania originally, correct?
Yes.
So
right.
Were you
small town in Pennsylvania?
Pirates fan, or was the Braves one of those things on the map that you were a fan of?
Phillies and the Braves.
Yeah.
Because Sid Bream came to my church a couple times and spoke. And he was from that area.
Okay.
So there was like a Sid Bream field, and he kind of gave back into the community and stuff. So I got to meet him. My dad talked to him and stuff, and his advice was go to school.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, go to school because the odds of you making it are so slim.
Every adult's advice to a young child coming up in sports is focus on school first, because it's a low percentage, especially baseball. Right now you got 50 rounds, and then you have 4 or 5 levels to go through before you get to that top level. It's a wild ride.
Yeah, well, now, and two, we were talking about like how it's a little bit softer, like the transfer portal.
Yeah.
For kids, like how are you supposed to teach a kid and make them do the hard stuff when they can just be like,
oh, this is too hard for me. I'm going to go somewhere else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like it's going to be a lot harder to coach kids at the college level when they can just be like, I don't like his attitude. I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
Like I don't really know that that's going to pan out very well for. I don't mind them paying the athletes because I think that they deserve to get some money off.
And I do agree with that now with the SEC and all the big major schools with paying athletes and endorsements now. I think that's deserved because they make so much money for the schools with nothing in return. Well, at least when we played, there was nothing in return. If you were the face of Tennessee football, say,
right,
you're not making any money, but the school is making bank off your jerseys and everything. And
Yeah.
I'm glad they kind of transferred that into college baseball now, or college football now.
Yeah, well, and we didn't get paid anything in the minor leagues.
And we're going to get into that because I remember coming up when I said, people would ask me like, I play minor league baseball for the Braves. Oh, you play professional baseball? Man, must be nice. Yeah, my $1,200 a month was real nice.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into it because that's a big issue now. There's class action lawsuits of guys coming up of if you transfer it to like hourly wages, you're making pennies on the hour because we're on the field so long. We play 150 games in the minor leagues. I can't remember the exact number. Yeah. And that's, say, 25 games a month plus 2 travel days. So you get 3 days off, and one of those days is going to be on the bus. So you're still at work.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't get paid for it.
Oh, yeah. Like, it's a lifestyle, for sure.
If you want to make baseball, that's your sacrifice. It's kind of like, oh, you want to do this? Well, you're going to have to crawl through the mud until you get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like we were talking about last night just a little bit, I had my grandma died. Someone close to me, and teams will usually.
You're not allowed to have time off.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, they'll usually give you like 3 days. Like that's the allotted amount of time. But
and I'm pretty sure that's because it's legally they have to do that.
Yeah, but like they have to say that, but they can also legally look at you and be like, if you go, like you're probably not going to get called up.
Steve next to you is going to take your spot before you are.
Exactly. Like those 3 days that you're gone, you're going to miss your start, and that could cause you your chance to get called up.
And that's always in the back of your head because it doesn't matter how good you are in baseball. Sometimes it's always going to be passed up by somebody that they spent more money on. Even if you're doing better stats, better career, better years, like not even that year, years before. Yeah. They spent $1 million more on him. They're going to give him a chance because they have a bigger investment.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and that's just, I feel like that's everywhere in life.
It's anything professional sports, life, it's money. But it's all political like that.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing with like, if I ever talk to kids and stuff like that, it's just, you're going to fail in life, especially in baseball. The best hitters hit 375. That means they're failing 75% of the time.
Yeah.
So it's not when or if you fail. It's how you come back from that failure. What are you going to do to make sure that doesn't happen again?
And baseball in itself is not a game of success. It's a game of consistency. That's the big one. You could have a really good game and as a pitcher give up 10 runs the next, and they're going to be like, huh. Mm-hmm. And you could have mediocre games for 5 weeks in a row, and they're going to look at that guy more because he's predictable. They know what they're going to get out of him.
Yeah, you definitely want to have consistency, and the only way to get that is be consistent with what you do off the field as well, which is where I started to get a little sideways in my career.
And it's kind of how we met because it was my first spring training was St. Patty's Day party, and here's Lerew, big leaguer, buying everybody drinks in the parking lot of a pub out in spring training.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I was 20 years old, I want to say.
Well, like, the older guys would always take care of the younger guys back when I came up. And you can see in baseball now it's changing.
You get the odd character be like, don't talk to me.
Yeah. But, like, an older guy would take you under their wing and, he knew you weren't making money.
So where I would find that would be the guys that really worked their ass off to get to where they're at. Not so much the guys that were naturally gifted, be like the 1%ers that made it all the way up.
Yeah.
They're kind of outsiders. The guys that really work to be like, I know how hard it is. They respect where you're at right now, but you got a long way to go.
Yeah, so I really didn't get mixed up in too much of that stuff because, like I said, in high school and stuff, I didn't do any of that. Like, it was only sports. It was working out, sports. That was it. I met my wife in high school. We've been together. She came to my school in, like, 6th grade, and I was like, who is that? But then I finally sealed the deal in, like, 10th grade. She was my square dancing partner. So I got her with the dance moves. But, I mean, she stuck with me through everything.
And that's impressive because the travel schedule in professional baseball is
and that's the other thing, too, is, like, when I did go from AA to AAA to the big leagues the same year, we had an apartment in Mississippi. And then it's like, hey, you're getting called up. You leave tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to leave her there. We're not making any money. And she has to figure out what she's going to do, like with the apartment, moving, everything, all that.
It's if you get called up, have a bad game, you get called back down. I know a couple times in your career in the big leagues, you went back and forth from the big leagues to AAA quite a bit, and that's got to be a mind killer. Like I remember my first call up from low A to high A, It was like, awesome, I made it. And I knew, they told me it was temporary. I was filling in for an injury.
Mm-hmm.
I was there for 3 weeks. I was like, man, maybe I'll stay. And that next call, you're going back down. And I was like, what now? Like, what did I do wrong? Probably nothing, but that was just my mindset. It's just the getting sent back down.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I still struggle with today, is always kind of feeling like a failure just because of that's the game we played.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like, I don't feel special. I don't feel anything. I just feel like, you know, I let people down, or people aren't proud of me for stuff. And I think that's a battle that a lot of baseball players deal with when they get out of baseball, is finding purpose.
And that was my big issue when I got released in 2011. I went into independent ball, but that release from spring training was rough on my mental state, because baseball was my whole life.
That's it.
I got to where I wanted to be, and now it's like, what the hell do I do now?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, climbing the ladder. The name of your podcast is. I mean, that's what we did, right?
Yeah,
we climbed that ladder until we got to where
it's tough to fall down one step though and then go back up. It's rough. It's a killer.
Yeah, you're all over that thing. And then, like, for me too, when I got to the top in 2005, it was like the first guy that kind of came up to me, Tim Hudson, right? And he's just like, hey, man, you need a place to live? You know, country boy, like...
Act like he knew you forever.
Dude, like, best personality ever.
And you guys are still really good friends.
Yes. Like, he is, like, family. He took me under his wing. I lived with him and his family. I got to see a whole different dynamic of, like, what a Christian household looked like. Like, I grew up going to church and all that kind of stuff, but there was no real, like, relationship there.
Yeah.
And at least for me, it was just something that you did.
Yeah. And now God's a big part of your life, and
Huge.
you give him credit for about everything that's come up since this kind of situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we'll kind of get into that, because we talked about religion and God and the difference between there. And I didn't grow up very religious. I'm not a very religious person. I don't go to church.
Mm-hmm.
But I respect people that do. Like, you're not the type of guy that throws it in everybody's face, be like, you have to do this or you're a terrible person.
No, he
affects you in a way that allows you to do what you do.
And I just got goosebumps because, like, it's so real for me, and, like, I have no doubt. But at the same time, I don't push it on other people. I just share what he's done for me in my life. And then, because I had people telling me to change whenever I was, you know, an alcoholic and drinking 10 to 15 or 24 beers every night, and not including shots. And that was but that was from 2005. So I'm living with Tim. I'm seeing, like, this whole different household dynamic. His wife's amazing. You know, she would do my laundry. Like, and I stayed in the basement, and I was dumb. You know, I was just like, oh yeah, this is awesome. And he's like, man, I gotta go put my kids to bed. I'm like, what? I'm like, you put your kids.
Kind of another eye opener of that.
Yeah,
life.
I was just like,
this is an actual job. It's not just us having fun and.
Yeah, and so live with them the whole time. But then it was like, you know, I'd go home with a different big league player, you know, and it was like you get in their car, and they reach behind the seat. There's a cooler of beer. They open one. Hey, you made it, kid. Here you go. And so you're just driving in Atlanta drinking beer with a guy in a car.
Yeah, that you just met.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I guess this is what you do.
Yeah.
You know, and then you go to bars or whatever, and everything's bought for you, and you kind of just you get lost in that.
It's just one of those you've come in, especially guys that don't grow up with money. Once you get to the big leagues, you get that first check, and it's like, I don't know what to do with this right now.
Yeah.
Like, my signing bonus was pretty decent out of college when I was drafted, and I had a really bad gambling problem. I didn't, no wife, no kids. It was, I went through $80,000 in 9 months, which may not seem like a lot to people, but when you don't have any money, that's a lot.
Yeah, and that's another big thing is gambling. You know, I didn't get really mixed up in that. It was alcohol, and mainly alcohol, but it was pretty much anything that I could do to take my mind off the stress and the decisions I had to make.
You have to do well to stay here.
To keep going. Yeah. Yes. Like, you know, my sister was getting married, and they're like, oh, you can go to her wedding, but the same thing with the grandma dying. Like, she'll probably get a divorce and get married again. Like, if you go, like...
Yeah, they screw with your mind. It's if I leave and do anything, I'm not going to make it where I want to make it.
And I mean,
here comes the rain again.
Yeah, here comes the rain again. But yeah, I mean, the sacrifices that you have to make, and putting the mistake I made was not having my priorities in order.
Yeah.
Right. So my priorities were the Braves tell me what to do. I'm gonna do that because that's where I want to be. And so we'll get into how I changed my priorities, but now my priorities is just living for God, right? Because the Braves or anybody, they can release you. And
without warning. Like it's not a hey, like when I got released, I was having a really good spring training. I was like, awesome, I've got my head out of my butt and kind of worked. I've worked to get to where I'm at now because I relied so much on my talent the years prior. Had a really good spring training. In the last cut of spring training where they were starting to decide teams, they're like, unfortunately, and that speech hits you and you're just like, you just stare at them. You don't say anything. Like, what do you do?
No. But yeah, so I replaced the Braves with God, and God's never gonna leave me. And I mean, and that's where I also, growing up in church and not living it and stuff, you got to do your own research on that too. Like religion, it's man-made, so it's flawed, right? We're all sinners, and so like I have to know what the book says. And I was for the longest time listening to people that, and you've been there. People that preach it but aren't living it.
Yeah.
I was that Christian for the longest time.
I've noticed that a lot because, like I said, we went into last week, I grew up in Canada. So moving down to the southeast, Tennessee, the Bible Belt, you see people go to church all the time. And then you get out in town, you meet somebody from church and be like, did you hear such and such is sleeping with who? And I was like, What's the point? If you're going to do that and just have one day to go ask for forgiveness, why are you doing all that?
Yeah.
You might as well live it instead of just act like you do.
Yep. And then, I mean, my eyes were closed to kind of all that stuff. And, I played with the Braves, had Tommy John, and same thing with you. I was coming back from Tommy John. I was out of options, and it was like middle of spring training, and they're like, you're out of options. We're not going to send you down. We got to put Tom Glavine back on the roster. You're getting released.
That's a big name too. It's kind of
at least I didn't get like
it's not like little Johnny coming up behind you.
Yeah, I was like, okay, well I got had I got sent to the minor leagues, they would have had to still pay me big league salary.
Yeah.
So I kind of understood that, and my off the field stuff is getting noticed because I'm still performing and still doing everything. But I have a problem, and it's not easy to hide a problem when you come in when you're putting Flexol on the top of your lip so that people can't smell your breath. It's kind of
similar to the Trevor Bauer situation right now, where he was acquitted of all of his charges, but nobody wants him because he's a media risk.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's fair to them. I guess they're running a business, and businesses have to look out for
and that's exactly what sports is.
That's all it is.
You grow up. It's just like what we're in right now. Mm-hmm. You have employees as business owners. If they're not doing their job, or if they have a bad image to the public, you have to do something about it.
Yeah. I mean, you're representing that team, and ultimately, what that team says goes. You know, and if you have standards, then you need to stick with your standards. Don't compromise. Like that's kind of what I did. Was just basically okay. Whatever they tell me I need to do, I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And then you get to where
it goes back to the military mentality. It's they're your drill sergeants, and you do what they say, or you have a very high risk of not coming back.
Yeah, and the prize to get to the big leagues is so much different than the minor leagues. It's like something that everybody aspires to do.
Yeah,
and Tim had a great career, awesome career, right? And there's the rain. Yeah.
Let's take a small break.
Yeah,
and we're gonna come back to that because it is absolutely dumping right now. As you can see, the rain isn't stopping, so we're going to try to power through this so it doesn't sound too staticky behind us. And we were just talking about Tim Hudson.
Oh, so yeah, I mean, you look at his career and how amazing he was at what he did, but then like people don't think about like the sacrifices that he had to make as far as like when he finally was done playing, his kids he had like 3 years with his kids before they're out of the house on their own. And, so you miss out a lot whenever when you do that stuff. But the difference between him and me was he was always a good Christian man and a family man. And his wife was,
it sounds like it's tough to be a family man when you have that kind of life.
Yeah. I mean, but he has the Hudson Foundation. That's like one of the best foundations because you don't have to jump through a lot of the hoops to get the money to where it needs to go.
Yeah.
And all the money that they do make or whatever goes right to the people that need it. Like there's no, like they don't keep.
There's no
anything.
loophole. Yeah.
And they're not trying to make money off of anything. It's all for the glory of God and to help people that are in need. And it's like, you know, a lot of foundations is there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
You know, and so just the selfless acts that they do and how much they provide for the community and to the people around them. They bring a lot to the table as far as like he was a good steward of everything he acquired from the Lord. And I think their Bible verse, I don't know the actual scripture. It might be Joshua or something. But it's like for thou that was given much, like much is required or something like that. Like, and don't quote me, like for sure always look up everything in the Bible for yourself because like I said, that's where I started to be able to grow and where kind of religion took a backseat because of being man-made and just focusing on God and what the book says, you know, standing on that rock. And the rock is it's the word of the Bible, and it's this. The word is the sword. You know what I mean? And so, how often in life was I trying to go into battle with a toothpick because I knew nothing, you know? And that's what I'm starting to figure out in life now. But to kind of fast forward through some stuff, came back from Tommy John, got released for the Tom Glavine, being put back on the roster, went to Kansas City, started in Double A. So somebody that's been on the roller coaster ride in the big leagues.
Oh, big leaguer down in Double A. All those Double A guys are like, what's this guy doing?
Yeah, and you know too, like a lot of guys can, like, you know, they can be.
And what a lot of people outside of professional baseball don't realize is that even in A-ball, but Double A for sure, those guys have the talent and the ability to play in the big leagues. It's all about consistency at that point.
Yeah.
They are able. You're playing big league players, but they're just not as consistent as those guys at that level.
Yep. Yep. And like, you know, guys that get sent down if they don't think that they deserve to be there could be Debbie Downers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so like that was my big thing was I had good mentors take care of me when I was in the big leagues. So that's how I wanted to be to the other kids down there. I didn't want to be like, you don't need to be here. Like I tried to take care of the guys and
kind of pass along the experiences.
But I also was leading them in a bad direction because I was.
You got that off the field mentality too.
Exactly. Like like I said, from 2005 to 2015, I probably had 1 month out of those 10 years where I didn't drink an alcoholic beverage. Every other night was drinking, at least a case of beer. It was easy for me to drink a case of beer.
When you're in the shape that you are at that point in your life, it takes a little bit to get you there.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, you fluctuate 10 pounds in a game, which is water weight. So, but went to Kansas City, got back to the big leagues with them. Still just kind of like a roller coaster ride, up, down, and once you get to the big leagues, like you said, it's like that extra level. And I wasn't doing the work off the field for sure. Just like you said, like after college, you kind of.
I relied on my talent to get me through it, but I didn't realize everybody there was just like me growing up.
Yep. So got stuck in that bad habit. Was still able to kind of be up and down, but then went to winter ball in Venezuela and ended up right after my son was born. So I did leave for 3 days and went home. My son was born. I had to go right back.
I feel like that's one of those situations. Not your sister's wedding. It's not something like that. This is your son being born. That's a big life milestone.
Yeah. And winter ball is a lot different than like playing
in season for a championship
because like they're grateful that you're coming there to do it, like because that brings money to their cities, right? And so Venezuela is not. They want American money. And the exchange rate is so different there. It's like when you go there, it's like $1 is like 9,000 bolivres or whatever, and so it's pretty cheap. But went there, ended up throwing a no-hitter. Well, that got me recognized by some scouts that were there from Japan and South Korea, and so I finally got an offer to go to Japan where it was like, okay, it's not an if contract, like it's a for sure contract. So I was like, yeah, I'm in.
And at this point, there's not a lot of people in the U.S. that, if you're outside of baseball, that know that Japan, Korea, all these big countries have their own professional baseball teams that are equivalents of the big leagues. Like it's not just like the big leagues isn't the best players everywhere. There's countries with leagues that have these same type of caliber players or more. Just look at the World Baseball Classic, for instance.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of big leaguers on the Japan roster, and they seem to win everything every year.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I will say in Japan, like I figured out real quick that like their work ethic is unreal. Like it's like military baseball. Like my first bullpen I threw, I was done. I went, I did my running, I went inside, I worked out, I went to the training room, got like a massage or whatever, was leaving to go back to the hotel. The guy that was throwing the bullpen beside me was still throwing the bullpen. It's like 3 hours, 3-hour bullpen.
And they didn't have Tommy John.
No, they didn't. And, that's our bodies, like American bodies and Asian bodies are like, the muscle tone and stuff's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Like, and I only realized that from whenever I had to go over there and coach. And we'll get to that. But, so Japan went there. We actually won the Asian series, which is like the World Series for here. But the team there that I was on, Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks, won that. So that was a cool experience. But I only played 1 year there, and then went to South Korea the next year for the Kia Tigers.
And that was that during COVID or was this before then?
This is before COVID. So this was 2012 and 13.
Okay.
So went over there. Family was with me. They have these like 1.5 liter beers. Man, I was drinking 4 of those every night.
So still a 6-pack for you every.
Well, no, I mean like 4 1.5 liters. I forget what it turned out to be, but yeah, it was over a case of beer.
Yeah,
like
that's
a
why.
night, like just, and they don't have dip over there. So, but they do have cigarettes. So, now I'm smoking cigarettes too. But to be fair, the 5th inning in Japan and in Korea, they take a 5-minute break. Umpires, everybody smoke. Like the players will hit a home run, come in, fire down a lung rocket, and then go back out and play the outfield. Like everybody.
It's just
smokes.
a whole different environment.
It's just the culture there. Everybody smokes for the most part. Like there might be like 2 or 3 guys that don't smoke on the whole team.
And they're from the U.S. usually because they.
Yeah. But that's one big difference that was in the fans, man. The fans in Venezuela.
It seems baseball sports seem much more passionate fans. Not just like, yeah, you have your hometown fans here, but they're like, they will cuss you out and insult your mother coming off. You know what I mean? Just because you play for the other side. Yeah. And I feel like it's not like that in bigger countries. It's more of everybody loves the sport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the passion that they have overseas, though, is crazy. You know how it's like in the States. It's like, be quiet when the pitcher's pitching.
Yeah.
Like, there is no quiet.
No.
Anytime during a baseball game.
No, I remember when I was playing with the junior nationals in Team Canada in Mexico. That's the most people I ever played in front of. I mean, we're 16, 17 years old. It's a junior national team. There's 35,000 people in the stands.
And they're just
they're just hooting and hollering between innings, during innings. There's no stopping.
Yep. And they have a chant or a song for every single player that comes up to bat, and everybody sings it. And they have these party boom sticks that they hit together. It's just a whole different environment. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And I wish, in America, it's like it would be like Game 7 of the World Series, like close, tight match, but it's like that for every single game. But yeah, played over there. Started the first year, closed the second year. I got released from there right before the All-Star break. But it was just a crazy, like, long story about how I started the first year, and then the next year they wanted me to be a closer. And I was like, okay, well, if I close, like, don't try and change me halfway through
and
the
those
year.
of you as pitchers that don't come up through baseball, you have your routine. As a starting pitcher, you have your routine. Your 5-day rotation, you do the same thing. You hit the weight room at the same time. You do your long toss. When you interrupt that routine to do something else and then have to go back to it, it throws you all out of whack.
Yeah, so I told them they had 3 starters go down, and was like, well, I told you I wouldn't do this, but can you be a starter? I was like, well, I need like 2 weeks to get ready.
Yeah.
Well, that 2 weeks was 2 weeks too long.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting released from there. Good terms and everything with them. came back home, didn't go to spring training because I was just like still a mess mentally because like I did everything I was supposed to do, and it was just one of those things where it was.
So there's nothing you could have done. It's just part of the ride.
Mm-hmm. And so ended up playing independent ball like 25 minutes from my house for like 4 games, and I got
hometown hero.
Yeah, got picked up by the Angels, but I was, not going to spring training and being at home, and I was just partying like anything I could find.
You were out of your routine that you had just done for the last 10 years.
Yeah, and it was like, oh, I can now everything that I couldn't do, I can do type thing.
Yeah,
So I started acquiring all this stuff. I had 15 vehicles, 2 3-wheelers, 2 4-wheelers, UTV, 2 mopeds, 2 scooters.
Well, we'll get into 2 wheels in a minute.
Yeah. But was with the Angels in AAA, Salt Lake, Utah, the Bees. Probably the worst year I've ever had, just because of the amount of drinking.
Yeah, I guess your mind wasn't there either.
Yeah, I was definitely burnt out. There was no more love for the game. It was a job.
Yeah.
And I wasn't doing good because of what I was doing.
And at that point, it's no fun.
Yeah, because my priority was, partying. Like it'd be like I feel like just tried to make it through the game without dying because I felt so bad, and then around the 7th inning, I'd start to feel a little better, and I'd be like, "Where are we going tonight?" You know what I mean? Like, and so it wasn't anything I wasn't even really paying attention to baseball essentially, and so that's where my talent. You can't be carried by your talent anymore. Like when you start to do that stuff, you have to work at it.
And if you're gonna do that kind of stuff off the field, it's even more so. Like you really have to do stuff off the field or in the weight room outside of the game that keeps you up there. If you're gonna be that kind of role. Yeah,
and getting to sleep like after games. If you have a good game, it's like it's hard to sleep because you're amped up. If you have a bad game, it's even worse. Like you're trying to sleep. So it's like sometimes you would just drink just to be able to pass out to go to sleep. At least that was my case. But yeah, I was a functioning alcoholic. So many times I should have gotten in trouble or be dead, it carried over to when I would get at home and I'd go to the beer distributor. I'd have the case of beer in my car with my kids in the car, and we always tried to plan our kids for the off season, and it worked out.
It never works like that for me.
It worked out. But I was in winter ball.
Yeah. So you still weren't there.
Yeah. So it was like, okay.
I remember Tara yesterday, or it might have been you that said you got a new puppy without telling her, and the day you got the puppy is the day you left for, I guess, Venezuela or somewhere, and left her with newborns and a puppy.
Yeah, a Great Dane puppy at that. So not a little guy. But yeah, so it was worst year ever. Got back home, same thing. I was like, I'm not gonna go to spring training. So I played for the team that was right by my house, and it was I met this guy there, and I've had guys along the way that I would have moments where I'd get back on track. Like Cody Strait was in Kansas City, the AA team I was, just good godly man, and he would talk to me about the stuff that I wasn't getting answered and like be real about it, authentic. And that was the biggest thing, was finding somebody that was going to be able to be authentic.
Lead you outside of that life.
Yeah. And then when I got up that year up home, Brian Pounds. And so he was that guy, just good Christian guy. And we would actually, I would be drinking and stuff like that. And I'd start questioning God and asking him questions. And then I got to the point where I'm going out after 2 handles of vodka, in a 1,000 horsepower Camaro, because I had everything that was supposed to make you happy.
Yeah.
Right.
All the material stuff.
I had a boy, I had a girl, I had a wife, I had a house, 15 vehicles, all the toys. And I was like, what is my purpose?
You realize that's not what it's about.
But that's what the world teaches you.
Yeah.
The world teaches you this will make you
stuff
happy.
Means success, and it doesn't.
And the worst is when people are like, well, if I had money, I'd be happy. It's like
money. And you see it all the time with investors and all these new TikTok guys that are kind of preaching real estate, all the billionaires, they all have money. Dan Bilzerian is big on this. He said once he had money, he realized that he's still not happy.
Yep. So I was questioning God. Got pulled over drunk in my hometown. I went to my wife was praying for me not to go, but I'm like, I gotta get gas in this thing. And it was the 1,000 horsepower.
Yeah.
And I got there and I didn't have my wallet. I sure had my cup of alcohol I had, but I didn't have my wallet. And I get out and the cop pulls in and he's like, "Sir, you been drinking?" I was like, "Yes, sir." And he's like, "Can you just leave your car here?" And I was like, "Yes, sir." I mean, but small town, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And everybody kind of knew who I was. So that was, but looking back on it now, there's a lot of prevenient grace in my life. A lot of times where stuff could have gone really, really bad. And, there was a purpose for my life that I didn't know about yet. But got back from a game after I pitched. I think it was July 1st. Or something, and right after the game, I pitched good. I was about to get picked up by Pittsburgh. That was the word, because I was pitching really good again. So the same thing as the previous year. Went back to the house. One of my dual sport bikes, the DRZ 400, hadn't been driven in a while, and the carburetor was kind of gummed up, so it wouldn't run right. So I took it out after drinking a lot.
This is right in the middle of a really good year.
Yeah, so just like normal though, I do this every single night pretty much.
Yeah.
Going out and driving it, cleaned it out. I was running 120 in it, and that's the max for that bike. But there's 2 carburetors on that, or 2 jets in that carburetor, which I didn't think about at the time because I was just it's running better.
Yeah.
Got to a parking lot, which is a Giant and a Rite Aid, which would be a Publix and a CVS, how they're joined. And I'm like, should I go to McDonald's or should I just go home? I don't know. So I was like, I'll go home. Turned, looked down, saw 2, so just 2 mile an hour, and it stalled because the carburetor jet for the not full throttle was still gummed up. And so it just locked the tire up, and I wasn't ready to pull the clutch in or anything. It just kicked me off to the side. I put my leg down, and it snapped. I didn't skid across the ground. I didn't.
It just broke the leg as soon as the foot hit the ground.
Didn't hurt the bike at all. Just snapped my leg, whatever it was. And so I was like, oh man, I tried to pick up the bike. My leg's just out to the side.
What goes through your head? So you're coming back through baseball, everything that we just went through, and your leg's broken now, and you are on your uphill climbing that ladder once again in this story, and now it's I'm gonna get picked up by Pittsburgh or another team, and then this happens.
Yeah, but I mean, I was questioning God, and He knew exactly what I needed. I was not gonna make it to the age I am now had I kept living the way I was living, and so the broken leg, I didn't want to get a DUI. And so I called my buddy that's a tow truck driver, and rest in peace now. He's no longer with us, but Colson, called him. I was like, hey, can you get my bike? Because Tara couldn't pick it up. I couldn't pick it up because I couldn't balance on my leg to pick it up because I was drunk. And I threw my leg over my other leg and army crawled to around, through the drive-through to the back of the building. And I was back there. I called my wife and I was like, my leg's off. Come get me. My leg's off. She's like, where are you? I'm like, Giant, around back. It's 5 minutes from my house. Yeah. So she just grabs the kids. They're still in their underwear. Puts them in the Hummer, comes to get me. I jump up. I hop to the thing. My leg's just flapping. Get in the car. What a sight for kids to see, right? What an example am I setting? And then to put my wife through this. And not just but
that's
previous to
pretty
that.
Amazing in itself because you and Tara were together before all of this professional sports really started hitting home. So she's been through all of this with you.
Yeah, she's always, and then the thing is, I always talk about clean rag, dirty rag. I was the dirty rag. So she would always try and be like, and she felt like a tug pulling her, to get me out of that kind of stuff. And then it was either leave me or join me. And so she just joined me. So next thing you know, we're going to strip clubs together and doing all this stuff together.
She accepted the life that you were going through and living for your dream to be reality.
It was just easier for her to join me than it was to go against it. So I ended up not realizing that till a different podcast I was on, and I said it. I was like, oh man, like sometimes you don't realize stuff.
You say who you were out loud, and you're like, man, I was a dick.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely don't deserve somebody like that to want to be around. Like, she didn't deserve it. Let's put it that way. But behind every great man is a good woman. And, you know, Tim's the same way. Kim is awesome. A lot of guys that I know that are, I mean, your wife.
Hope's the same way. This shop that we're sitting in right now wouldn't be where it is without her keeping me under control. Because like I said, I grew up with a decently wealthy family. So money was never a thing for me. So if I had $15 in my pocket, I would spend 17. Right. Be like, oh, I'm in debt, whatever, I'll get it, make it. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was never a thought like that. And Hope didn't grow up like that. And she keeps us under control. And this shop would be nowhere where it is right now without her.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to point it out, because I just know that behind every good man, there's a great woman, you know? And there's more people that I know that are exactly like that. It's like, I get with them and I'm like, man, we're stupid, but like, our women hold us together. Yeah. So, so get to the hospital.
Yeah, I was gonna say your leg's broken, and we're in the middle of a good season right now. How are we dealing with this?
Well, I get to the hospital. They can't operate on me because I'm like 4 times the legal limit or something like that. But like,
for like the anesthesia and stuff.
Yeah, so they couldn't put me under to do the surgery because they're like, dude, like you're a wreck. So when they finally did do surgery, they put a rod in. And it was just a clean break, 6 weeks, you'll be healed. And I'm like, oh, I'll get back from this. You know what I mean? Like, no problem. Not a big deal.
Not thinking about not moving and all that muscle going away and conditioning and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, that's the good thing about the rod was like as soon as they put the rod in there, it was like a couple of days. And then you're kind of like full load bearing and all that kind of stuff, like crutches. So I knew what I had to do from going through Tommy John to be able to get back. But doing it off the field, no insurance, no contract. And then 6 weeks turned into a month, and I'm in a lot of pain. And I'm going in saying I'm in a lot of pain. And they're like taking blood, and they're looking at my leg. They're like, there's nothing wrong. And I'm like, man, maybe I'm just being a wuss. Like, I was like, I never broke my leg before. You know, I've had Tommy John, that hurt, but didn't feel like this. This had like a heartbeat in it, and it was unbearable. And then went in again, like, hey, I'm in pain. They're like, well, let's check your blood. No infection in the blood. You're good. Finally got to the point where I went to the emergency room. And they're like, well, we'll do surgery. Does look like you have some swelling in there. So they put like this sponge thing in, and I was in the hospital for a week, and they drain it, close it up. I'd go home, boom, be back in that next month. Same thing, in for a week, drain it. But this went on for 6 months. So six different weeks I was in the hospital. Still, blood wouldn't said it wasn't infected. But now I'm like, there's something wrong.
Something's there. You know something's there.
Yeah. So I go to Hershey Medical Center, which Hershey candy bars, if anybody knows about that, like that's where that's at up in Pennsylvania. Go there and see Dr. Spencer Reed, and dude's a stud. And he basically looked at the x-ray. It was my birthday that we went, and he looked at the x-ray. He's like, Rod's got to come out tomorrow, emergency surgery. You're going to lose your leg if you didn't already. And I was like, what?
Whoa.
Like, I just went through 6 months of telling these people that there's something wrong with my leg. Yeah. And they're like, no, you just want more pain medicine. You just want that, like, accuse my wife of wanting more pain medicine. But, like, I was legitimately in pain. And so he's like, emergency surgery tomorrow.
Just from looking at an x-ray.
Yep. He could see, like, so my bone basically looked like a golf ball. Like, the infection was eating the bone. So instead of it being like a straight line, it like all these indents. And he easily showed it to me. Yeah. And it's like, how did they not see
How did they miss this?
So he explained it to me in baseball terms. Because like I said, I'm stupid. So he dumbed it down for me. He's like, you're at a minor league hospital. He goes, and your leg is a curveball. They don't hit the curveball there. He goes, this is a big league hospital. He goes, we smash a curveball. And I was like, Like, it just made sense. So Rod came out next day, woke up with this Lizra frame on. And then that was just supposed to be...
We'll pop a picture of that here in the video podcast, and you guys will be able to see what that's like. It's a pretty wild contraption, I guess. Best way to describe it. It's a big bird cage around your leg.
Yeah, and a lot of screws and pins and stuff going into your bone. It's basically an external rod that's held together to keep where you're not putting any pressure on your bone, but you can still walk because the cage is only allowing
the weight bearing is on the cage rather than going through your bone itself.
So it's basically at the top of my leg where it was, and the bottom of my ankle. That's where all the weight was put.
Yeah.
So I mean, walking was like not very much. Is bed to bathroom basically only, and so 6 weeks that was supposed to heal.
But they saved the leg. Like he told you were gonna lose the leg if you hadn't already. What's that? How did that go from, we saved your leg?
Well, it went from, it's supposed to be 6 weeks with that on to, I'm still in pain after 6 weeks. And he looked at an x-ray, goes, oh, well, your bone's dead. So that turned into me being patient 0 for this procedure. And so I woke up after that next surgery. They basically removed the inch of dead bone and then cut at the top the bone, and these 3 pins held the bone that it floated in there. And then I would click these clickers on the cage that would transport the bone down slowly.
Wow.
And so, and during this time, they had to put a PICC line in my arm into my heart for me to give myself antibiotics, because if they just put them in regular veins, the antibiotics that I was on were so strong that they would just chew through your veins. So 3 times a day, I'm having to put antibiotics into my aorta. And so that wasn't fun. Made you feel like crap. And so I got to where there was no veins on me. Always been in pretty good shape.
I was going to say, every time I've seen you, you've always been a pretty big dude. Your arms have been pretty noticed.
Yeah, so can't find any veins on me, and I'm in bed, and I'm like, just cut my leg off. And he's like...
Kind of at that point of like giving up mentality. We're like, I don't want to go through this anymore.
Yeah. Well, I was dying. I knew like this infection or something, like it was, and I was like, just cut my leg off, and he's like, we're not there yet. And so I woke up, with that cage on with 1 inch of my bone missing. So my leg was way shorter, and my wife was like, so when I was questioning God and had the accident, we had found this church in East Berlin. It was New Life Assemblies of God. And that's what it was for me, man. It was a new life. Pastor Joel Everhart everything he was saying was like, it was set up. You know what I mean? Like, do you have all this stuff to
it's
where
made for you?
Yeah. Like, do you have a building to like put your stuff in, like, and all these distractions? And I'm just like, did somebody talk to this guy? Like, what's going on? And then like I talked to him a couple times, and he was just the realest dude, super authentic. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't holier than thou. He spoke it how it really is. It's like, we're all sinners. We all mess up. And, it was what I was looking for, and it was perfect. And then I woke up with that inch of bone removed, and my wife was like, you need to hear this past Sunday's service. It was really good. And I was like, I just woke up from surgery. You've had surgery, right?
I have not.
You've not had any surgery?
I've not had surgery.
Wow. Well, when you wake up from a surgery,
I said, you've spent much more time in the hospital than I have.
Yeah. So when you wake up from a surgery, everything just seems to move like a lot quicker. Even though I don't think you are, everything's just... And I was like, no, I want to be able to like listen to it. Like, I just woke up from surgery. So like I kind of like turned my head, and next thing you know, I started playing, and I went to like look at her to tell her I told her not to play it. She had placed her phone over by the window, and then, hospital rooms are like, it's like a good distance away from where the bed is.
You can't get it.
And so it just started playing. I was like, I told you not to play. She's like, I didn't touch it. And I was like, what? And it was about how, Jesus was perfect, didn't do anything wrong, how everybody kind of turned against him, all the pain he went through, the suffering he went through, but he suffered well. And here I'm laying in bed. I'm like, I'm not suffering well. And I did this all to myself. Like, and I can't fix this. Like, I'm not invincible anymore. So I was just like, God, if you can fix this, I'll tell everybody. And that's when everything kind of just 180'd as far as my brain, my mind changed, which changed my heart. Like, it's like I just knew that the only way out of this was it was going to be a miracle. I had, a doctor, a lawyer, all that kind of stuff. And slowly but surely, it just everything started to get better. Stayed in church, started to be able to share more and kind of see stuff differently. Like, everything, my eyes were open to all this stuff that I didn't see before.
With this mind shift, was sports still in that, or was it not a priority yet until you were back on your feet?
Yeah, because I still thought I was probably going to lose my leg. But it ended up, since I was patient zero, they had all these, like, I'd go into the hospital once a month, which I would get paid for, which was nice because, like I said, off the field, no insurance, no money coming in. So I had to pay for all this stuff. So everything that I tried to plan out, let's say, and money for kids to go to school, 15 vehicles, all paid for, all this stuff, house, like, every time we needed money got low, a car would sell. Every time, so everything I was a bad steward of, like,
your bad life material things started disappearing.
Everything that I acquired the wrong way, God was like, all right, you want to serve me? Like, give it all back.
Yeah.
And I'm like, take it. And, like, I had people being like, you can't get rid of that. You can't sell that. You can't do. I'm like, watch me. Like, it's not mine anyway. Like, and so that was one of the things right there that just started to, it's like, man, we'd be down to, like, no money at all and a car would sell. Or it'd be down to no money at all. There'd be $500 cash in the mailbox. And that just kept on happening. And then when I called Tim to tell him that I came to God, because, like, when I got into the hospital, pretty much all those friends.
No friends to be seen.
Family, kind of like, it was just my wife and my kids pretty much that were the ones.
The people that matter.
Yeah. And so when I called Tim, it was like the prodigal son story. You know what I mean? He was just like, oh, man.
He was super pumped.
Super pumped. He knew how crazy I was for the wrong side. So it's like, if I can party for myself and the wrong side, I better be able to do that double for the good side. So, he was just like, man, why don't you come down to my farm, rehab your leg? I had a 67 Camaro, and he had like a 2009 Camaro that he ordered when I was with him in Atlanta. Like, we were picking the options.
Is that the one you bought when I was at your shop last year? You were talking about something?
Yeah,
you bought it off of him?
Well, I didn't buy it off of him. So it was one of those things where it was like, we got down to, like, no money. I knew he had always wanted to order a Camaro, and this was a 67 Camaro, all steel car, except for the hood was fiberglass. Not tubbed out, not with a 454
Merlin. Good body car.
454 Merlin bib block. I did the 4-link on it, the brakes. Like, this thing was cherry. And so it was like a $50,000 car or $45,000 car at the time. And his car that he got when he was in Atlanta was like $23,000. So I was like, hey, man, I'll trade you. And he was just like, yeah. Like, yeah, I want that car. And he still has it, which is awesome. And I still have his car, but that's the first car that I acquired after coming to God.
The right way,
I guess. I still have it, which is kind of like, I mean, if I have to sell it, I will, but there hasn't been a need to. So go down to his farm in Hurtsboro, Alabama, rehab my leg, help him with his baseball facility, get into a church down there. And it's like, where my church was in Pennsylvania to that church, it was like the preachers had talked to each other. Because now I'm getting smacked in the head by this other guy. And I'm like, what is going on? And everything was just starting to click and make sense. And I had a lot of opportunities to share at, he does, like, stuff for kids that show exemplary actions in school and stuff for Thanksgivings. Like, he gives out Thanksgiving dinners and stuff like that to kids.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I was able to go share my testimony at these schools. Like, hey, don't get mixed up in drugs. And
here's why.
Yeah. Like, this is, And so basically what I told God I would do, it's pretty easy. I just said I would share my testimony. And everybody has a testimony. That's the thing. You have a testimony. And people that think that their testimony isn't going to help anybody, that's the devil telling you that.
And that's kind of the whole idea of this show is there's a lot of people that I come into, they see the shop that I have and how fast it came up. And it was like, man, must be nice. What did you have to do? And it's not one of those things. It's, you don't know how close it is. You just have to hit the right spot or find the right person or talk to the right person. And all of a sudden it just clicks. You're like, there's a shift in your mind that is like, I can do this.
Yeah. Yep. And so, I mean, and that's like, you started out with nothing with this, right? And build it.
$2,500. That's all I had left to my name. It was done. I was way out of baseball, a couple years out of baseball. 2 kids at the time. We now have 3. And my wife was making $35,000 a year on a job that she was a manager of, but she wasn't getting paid what she deserved. And we talked about it all the time. For the amount of work she did not get paid. I think the most we made in a year was $36,000. And at the time when we were married, I didn't have a job because I was so baseball oriented. And then I worked for Sprint. I worked here and there for small little jobs. And I was like, I'm tired of working for somebody. Mm-hmm. So I turned my hobby into a job, and cars was always a passion, at least detailing, not necessarily fast cars. Like you said, it's kind of how you recognized me without knowing. It was more cleaning, detailing, and that side aspect of it rather than fast cars. And it kind of transitioned into, I started to make the money to be able to have fast cars. Yeah. And you ask my wife, it got way out of hand. But
yeah. But like that, that was one thing. Like while I was laid up in bed, only bed to bathroom with the cage on my leg, I was able to reflect on a lot of stuff and do a lot of research and get in the word more, and then figure out like, man, I was living all wrong. I had my priorities way messed up. But then like recognize, like I was a car guy, and then so I started seeing like your posts. I had no idea that you were even with the Braves until I had called you like whenever I was figured out what I wanted to do.
Well, I think you messaged me on Facebook first, and then I saw Anthony Lerew pop up. I was like, that name sounds familiar. And then I clicked on the profile, and you're like, oh, small world.
Yeah. So, and then I was like, this guy probably, if I played with this guy, he probably thinks I'm like just a bad person. You know what I mean?
You ignored me for 10 years. What do you want now?
But I got completely healed from my accident. I don't have anything wrong with my leg. I actually got back to playing baseball in winter ball. I thought God was going to use that as like my testimony, get back to the big leagues, share in that kind of way. And I quickly found out that it wasn't. When I went to Venezuela, I'm there. I'm at this Church of the Highlands in Auburn. They give out these Pray First bracelets. I'm playing on a team there, and a guy shows up and has a Pray First bracelet on. I'm like, where'd you get that bracelet? He goes, a church. I go, you go to Church of the Highlands? He's like, yeah. I go, what campus? He goes, Auburn campus. I was like, what? So what are the odds that 2 guys, because they only get 2 like foreigners, you can't just stack a team. 2 guys on the same team in Venezuela, professional baseball players, go to the same church, never met each other before. And the economy was horrible. Like we would go to the field, we'd see people digging through trash.
Yeah.
Like kids digging through trash. And it was like $1 was 9,000, but like $1 American money was like a backpack full of cash there. And so talk to the clubhouse guy. You don't usually want to go out there by yourself, but paid security.
And I remember doing that when we traveled through like Dominican Republic and all that stuff when we were playing the junior national team. Mm-hmm. It was, don't leave the resort.
Yeah. Yeah. If you do, like, good luck.
Yeah.
So, just put on my heart, like, let's get some money together. Jonathan Albadejo, he played with the Yankees. He spoke Spanish and English fluently. We all got together, paid the clubhouse guy's wife. She made 100 spaghetti meals, got in the van, the team van thing, went around, saw people on the street digging through trash, would call them over to the bus. It said, God loves you on top of the box. And we would pray for them and give them the food. And it was like, that was better feeling than throwing a no-hitter. It's a better feeling than getting drafted by the Atlanta Braves. It's a better feeling than anything I've ever.
You were doing something for somebody else. It wasn't yourself.
Yeah. And it was like, oh, this is my purpose. Like, it's not about me anymore. Like, I died to myself in that hotel room bed. Now it's about just relying on God and putting him first. Like, he got me through all that stuff afterwards by providing the people that would come and go. And all I had to do was hold up to my end of the bargain.
Yep.
You know, and it was like, okay. And so, got a job offer from the Kia Tigers to go over there and be like a strength coach / pitching coach.
This is South Korea?
Yes, so for the Kia Tigers.
Yep.
So because when I was over there, anytime I went to another country, I wasn't like, oh, I'm American, I'm better than y'all. Like, I was like, well, this is what you do. This is what I'm going to do. Like, this is your country. Yeah. Like, I'm going to do what you guys do. I'm going to eat what you guys eat. Like, I wanted to. And so because I embraced their culture so much, they wanted me to come back and be a coach there. And it was like the first time that they ever had an American coach for that team. So I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I was like, well, is it the devil trying to silence me because I can't share my testimony?
I was about to say, is this still like a big language barrier? You're a coach. Right. How does this work?
Well, I think you'll agree with me. Baseball's pretty universal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can just show guys like, hey, you want this here, put this here, do this. And they get it. But like the church that my wife went to when I played over there, like our apartment was right beside it when we went back. So it was like a little God wink. Like, this is where you're supposed to be for right now. And what it was for, I don't know. I'm not, we're not supposed to understand everything, but there's purpose in everything. Me being here right now on this podcast there's a purpose for it. You know what I mean? And maybe it's to reach somebody out there.
And it was kind of weird too, because we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago when we started introducing this online and on Facebook, and it was, well, I'm coming to Nashville because I was talking about going down to your shop for Alabama to do this. Because podcast just starting. I'm not going to ask people to come out of their way to, hey, come up to this no name and do this podcast has no viewers and come up there. So I planned to travel around, and all of a sudden it was like, well, I'm going to be in Nashville. That's 2 hours from here. You might as well just swing by.
Yeah. So I went to, we'll get to how that all transpired, because I went to Korea, I was sharing my testimony over there, and then COVID happened, of course. And
that was a big one with the family with you and everything.
Yeah. Everybody was with me, and, it was a lot of family time, and, everything just got shut down. Churches got a bad name, because Christian population was really popping over there, but with that, a lot of fake ones were popping up, and so they wouldn't want to abide by mask mandates or whatever. And then they go into hiding. So it gave all churches a bad name. So, and then I didn't want to be the guy to bring COVID to the team. So it's like, they can track your phone over in Korea. It's not like the States. There's not like the government.
It's not the freedom. And all
the government can watch you, and like that's how it is. You have to download an app. They know where you're going. And actually, if you were somewhere where somebody had COVID, you'd basically get this thick thing of paper, and it would be like, case was here, your table was here.
They tell you exactly where you were.
And then where'd you go after that? Oh, you were at the bus terminal here. All these people were in the bus terminal. Yeah. And then that like spiders down. It starts with one, and it just keeps on spidering, pages and pages.
And you started all of this.
Well, yeah. Like, so that person at the top, and people were like, if they tried to get away from it, like, you're going to jail or whatever. So it was like, okay, I don't want to be the American guy that brings COVID to the field. Our team would have had to be shut down for 2 weeks. You know what I mean? It was just like, so we didn't do anything.
You guys had to take tests just about every day, pretty close to move around.
Well, I had to take a test before I would go to the field, like not a COVID test, but I had to take my temperature before I go to the field. Walking into the field, they had these thermal cameras that would tell you your temperature, and then you'd have to wear a mask, right? And it was like, if you're going to be anywhere in public, you need to wear the mask. We're eating, but side by side, inside where nobody sees us together. You know what I mean? Like, but if you're in public because people watch you, you better have that mask on. And it's like, okay, this isn't real, right? Like, but did it. It was hard, like breathing through a mask for a big guy. Like, I felt like I was suffocating half the time. I'm sure people here did too.
Oh yeah.
but it kind of, so I was over there for 3 years, and then my wife's dad got sick, and her family wasn't the best either. Like I said, like Tim's family's kind of been more family to me.
More family than your regular family.
Yeah, and I mean not, and probably from my own fault from being the way I was. You know what I mean? But yeah, I probably distanced myself from. I mean, maybe they distanced themselves from me because they didn't think I was going to be around very long the way I was living. You know what I mean? Like it's not anybody's fault, but my own, because I just did what I wanted to do. I wasn't trying to do anything else. But she had not spoke to her dad for like 8 years. But like the hospital called and was like, he's got like a week left to live. And so, her brother called and he's like, well, she was like, no, I'm good. Like, and it was like, well, you need to be here for your mom. And then she was like, okay. So she was like, I'm leaving. I was like, okay, we'll pray about it. If you can go to the airport, get on the plane, everything, then I'll just stay here, keep working. They had the COVID paperwork wrong.
Oh,
so she
man.
gets to the airport. She's stuck in the airport with a Great Dane, a rescued dog from Korea, 2 kids, and she can't speak the language really. And the guy that dropped her off there from the team that was the translator had already left. And so she calls me bawling. They gave her dad a week left to live. It's a 3-day process to get COVID paperwork done again. And so I was just like, well, I'm supposed to go with you. So it came to a point where I went to the team. I was just like, look, I have to do this. I have to be there for my wife. Like, this is a tough time. She was going to go. It didn't work out. I need to be there for her. And they're like, well, we're not going to pay you for the time you're gone or whatever. I'm like, doesn't matter. It was like the first time in my life.
And that's very similar to the minor leagues. So like you leave, there's no paycheck.
But it was the first time in my life that I put the priority of my family over a paycheck.
Career. Yeah.
And crazy stuff happened. Like, they ended up paying me the whole time that I was gone. Like, they respected my decision for my family so much that I was home for 2 months.
I don't think that would ever happen in the U.S.
It wouldn't.
That would not happen in the U.S. That's a culture thing they respected.
Yep. Yeah, if I would have done that in the States, they'd have been like, sayonara.
Sweet, you just saved us money.
Yeah. So that was one good thing I have to say about the Kia Tigers and South Korea and stuff, is like, I did the right thing and I was rewarded for it.
Yeah.
And that's probably a God thing too, the timing of it and everything.
And I'm sure that solidifies that decision to definitely make that kind of decision again.
Yeah.
I made the right decision for my family and I still got rewarded for it.
Yeah.
Then it's like a
blessing.
A whole mind shift.
Yeah. And then that just kept snowballing. Like, anytime I would go talk somewhere. So, got back to the States, and then it was like, what am I going to do? Like, I know we're not going back over there. I'm done with baseball. It's 2001 to 2019, 19 years of doing this for a check, for myself.
The reality of the end is you see it.
Well, my family was struggling over there, and I didn't even realize it, like, because they were locked up, basically. And so got back, got them into school, all that kind of stuff. But then I was like, what am I going to do to make money? And then started to have like bad thoughts, suicidal thoughts. You'd be sitting at a light, you're like, I'll just drive out in front of this truck. Like, and
that's kind of where my mindset was in 2011 when I was released from the Braves, where I just saw everything I'd worked for 15 years just like come to an instant end. And I was like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. Well, we put our identity into something that is not permanent, and now my identity is in God, who is permanent. Like, He created everything. But we see her dad, all that kind of stuff, but then he's getting better, and then nothing kind of really changed there, and it's like, well, we don't really want to
kind of in limbo sort of thing.
And we knew we didn't really want to live there anymore.
Yeah.
It just wasn't a good environment to like be around. So we were like, we're going to Alabama. I didn't know where I was going this time.
I was going to say, is that a choice because that's where Tim's from, or is it like close to one of your closest friends, or is it that you just had that in your heart?
Well, it was the time I spent rehabbing there. We fell in. It's
Yeah.
Sweet Home, Alabama is like it's legit.
Similar to kind of how I'm kind of in this area, not necessarily because I married somebody from here, but I enjoy being in Tennessee where we're at.
People are nice.
Yeah.
Like you can speak about faith, and people like in Pennsylvania, people don't usually just go around
big city
praying
stuff.
for people.
Yeah, it's just that mindset.
Yeah. And so it was one of those things where I didn't know where we were going. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew we were going to Alabama because we fell in love with that there. And I couldn't even get a hold of Tim. So it's not like I had somewhere to go. It wasn't like I had stuff planned out. And then got down to Alabama and it was like, what am I going to do? I actually went to this guy's tent shop, Kelly. Met him when I was rehabbing there and stuff. And I wanted to get I got a Toyota Camry because it got good gas mileage. You know what I mean? Like total different.
Not person. 1,000 horsepower Camaro.
No. Sold the Hummer. Like got this other thing. Like and basically just everything parlayed into starting to just be more practical. Not like try and feel like not have the best nicest stuff.
Get out of the professional athlete lifestyle.
Yeah, because like none of that stuff made you happy anyway. You know what I mean? So it was like, well. Let's get something that's actually like
something you enjoy doing.
Economical. Yeah. So get that. Go to his tent shop. Here, this kid walks in with Auburn baseball shirt on, and I'm like, "Oh, you play baseball?" Share my testimony with him, and the dad was like, "Hey, would you want to go on a baseball?" And I was like, "What's that?" He was like, "It's like a 3-day spiritual retreat, like kind of like for yourself and to figure out." I was like, yep. Because like I always told myself I'd be a yes man for the Lord. Like, so when people ask me to talk or do anything, I just say yes. Figure out how that's going to happen. Because if you wait for the perfect time or try to clean yourself up before you get you're never going to do it. So I just always say yes and then figure out how I'm going to do it. And there's always blessings on the other side. It's
kind of like that workout attitude when you get into the new year is like, oh, I'll start tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Why not now?
Next thing you know, it's next year and you're making another pact. Well, it's Thanksgiving. I'll start after Thanksgiving. Next thing you know, it's Christmas. I'll start
New
after
Year's.
that.
I got to enjoy the New Year, so I'll start in February.
Yeah. So he was like, you want to go on a Emmaus walk? And so I went on that and it was a game changer. One of the best things I ever did in my life. My wife went the month after I did. And then, talking with the tent guy, trying to figure out what I was going to do. He's like, first person that was like, what do you want to do? Everybody was like, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do now? Yeah. What are you going to do?
Not what do you want to do?
Yeah. He was like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, I always had a passion for cars. I'm working on cars. He's like, detailing. And me and the wife started detailing the very next day. So just like you started with $1,200, and I saw it like in a picture that you have in the garage.
Yeah, and I'll post it up too. Yeah, it's a bunch of cheap stuff that I had no idea how to use.
I got a truck with a cap on the back, and we started mobile like the next week. And it, I got a lot of opportunities to speak. One being at the Youth for Christ. They go into this Opelika detention center for kids that got in some real trouble.
Yeah.
And I went in there and shared with them my testimony and how God's changed my life and how sometimes, you feel like you're stuck in an environment, or like if you surround yourself by the wrong people, how you can get sucked back in, all that kind of stuff. And the questions they asked were so much different than like when I speak at a school or when I speak at, FCA, Future Christian
It's coming
stuff.
from a different side of a world outside of what you're used to. It's coming from a different side.
The questions they were asking, what's a good book of the Bible to start in? Like, and I'm like,
I bet you that caught you off guard.
No, I was like Proverbs, because Proverbs is basically telling you how to be, like how you're supposed to act.
Yeah.
Like, and so, and like just 2 weeks previous to that is I was watching that Oliver Anthony guy. And he said about it on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Yes.
And so I was like, Proverbs, I'll look into it. And I started reading it and I couldn't put it down. And so like 2 weeks before that, I had something that prepared me for that question. And so I went to a Youth for Christ event then. where they had this comedian, Brad Stein, and Time Magazine or whatever calls him God's comic, but he's just a conservative like comedian, like sticking up for the truth of the world, and he's funny. And talked to him afterwards, and he's like, "Oh, I'd love to have you on my podcast." And I was like, "What?" So yeah, and then I was like, "Well, I don't know how I'm going to get up there to do that." Or
he's got a much nicer setup than I do here.
Well,
it took us about 2 hours to set up.
With running a business, you'll fall into a lot of, I can't leave this business to go do this. But every time I put God first, something
else happens.
Yes, it might not be monetary. It might be just something I get out of it. It might be something I learn. It might be that I helped somebody, and but we're all called to, like, one thing that was said to me that kind of made sense is like, some people plant seeds, some people water them, some people harvest them, but God does all the growing. So by me at least going and sharing my testimony, I'm planting seeds. And just like Tim planted the seed for me back in the day. He didn't see me get watered, but I got watered by that guy in Kansas City, Cody. Got watered by that Brian Pounds.
Everybody did their part in the system to make it work.
Then there was like, I had the harvest when I was in the room with my wife. And then, God's doing a lot of the growing. And just like when I said I wanted to do detailing, it was like all washed up. So, which
is, like I was saying earlier before we started this, is the best name for an ex-pro athlete to start a shop. Is you're all washed up, old man. That was always the comment.
Yeah.
And you have a bunch of different meetings for that one, actually.
Yeah. So all washed up, is all washed up baseball player, but all washed up in the blood of Christ. And so like your vehicle is our vehicle to share the gospel. So basically all our customers ask, how did you start this business or whatever? And I got to give them the story. I got to tell them, and so I get to share it that way. Leave little notes in the car, Bible verses or something. Pray for clients if they come in, just be like, "Hey, can I pray for you?" Like, and that's easy.
Have you ever ran into an issue with that with clients? I know we both detail as far as shops go. Have you ever ran into a client where if you left a Bible verse in a car, it was like, well, what'd you do that for? Like you get into that person.
Yeah. I mean, whenever I was handing out testimony cards over in Korea, sometimes they would take them and like just crumple them up and throw them down. But then all I did was put a picture of me in a Kia Tigers uniform on the front. So they'd see that and they'd be like, oh,
there's something in common.
So I'd sign it. And then on the back of it in Korean was my testimony.
Yeah.
So it was kind of just, figuring out different ways to be able to get people to
make that personal connection, not just shoving the word on somebody.
Give them something in return for what you're truly trying to do. And, we make cars repent. And so like, that was another thing that just kind of like came into my mind. It was like, I was so scratched up and just my paint was horrible. You know what I mean? Like my tires were dirty, my engine bay was disgusting. And, the Lord cleaned me up. And so we make cars repent. They come in dirty, they leave clean. And it's been a faith-based, God-first business to where,
and you're working with your family. It's family-run business.
It's family-run. The guy that we've had now is coming up on 2 years, Jim. He was a guy that went on an Emmaus walk too. And just like my business is growing, like my walk with the Lord is growing too. So like, he gives me like, God gave me like real easy, small tasks to do at first. And it's like, if you do them, then it's like, okay, well now you have this opportunity. Well, now you have this opportunity, and it's like, you got to do what you got to do. So
you got to take those first steps before you get to the fourth and fifth. You can't just jump.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people, like how I started my business too, is I went around and I shook people's hands in person. I didn't get online and be like, I'm looking for a $20 an hour job. Like, this is what my resume is. It's like, no, like,
you didn't want to be spoon fed. You went out and found
it. Go talk to people. Like, don't hide behind a computer and all that stuff. Like that is.
Well, I get people with the shop that is now well known in the area. I'll have friends of friends or family members message me and be like, such and such, my son, my cousin, my friend's looking for a job. Great. Why aren't they messaging me?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't they come into the shop and talk to me?
I say that one time, like if you're asking for a job and you're local,
Yeah.
walk in. We've hired 2 people that have walked through the door.
Mm. That's the thing. Like you gotta show up. You can't. In the same way with churches, some churches, and I don't want to talk bad about churches, but some churches get comfortable in trying to just say the things that are going to keep people in seats.
Yeah.
Like churches are supposed to be where you come in and you get discipled and then you go out and make disciples. Like not something where you just stay in like your little cushy
Business
place.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, some preachers, and that's why I could never get the answers I wanted to get, was because they don't want to say those hard things.
Well, that was a
you
big
don't want to
topic.
hear it when you're a sinner.
That was a big topic around here a couple of weeks ago when we had the snowstorm. Is people getting stuck or no power, people with no power and no heat. None of the churches open their doors around here, and that was a big to do in the community because everybody's really into going to church here, really religious, and it was like, well, why not? Like you're preaching it, but you're not doing it.
Yeah, and that's we're human. That's what it is. We're all we're sinners, and if you don't have that relationship, and there's seasons too. You'll have seasons. I still have seasons where it's like, you have to stay in it. It's like trying to get to the big leagues. You can't be lukewarm.
Yeah,
you can't have one toe in.
You can't take those 2 weeks off and expect it to be there.
No, you have to keep yourself surrounded by people that are going to hold you accountable. It's not judging when they're holding you accountable. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people get upset and be like, well, you're just judging me. It's like, no, man, I'm trying to hold you accountable.
And I run into this problem too as a business owner when we have employees, and everybody, the team we have now is probably the best we've ever had. As far as camaraderie, as far as everybody hanging out, getting along, everybody likes each other. Well, there comes a time where me as a business owner, the expectations I have that have made the foundation of this, if they're not met, then I have to do my job. It's like, hey, that's not good enough. Let's do what we need to do to get better. And it gets taken personally sometimes. Really, it's just me doing what I need to do.
Well, I mean, I think you'll agree too. Some of the coaches that I hated the most, I look back on now and I'm like, man, they were
holding you accountable.
They were the best coach I ever had. But at the time, I didn't want to hear it because I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to do it my way.
Yep.
And it's like, you look back and you're like, man, I'm so thankful for that coach. That was so hard on me. Like, because if I didn't have him, like, so like that's part of, running a good business is you're not doing it to hurt your feelings or their feelings. You're doing it to make them better.
Correct.
You're doing it so that they can do the work that needs to be done to where they can live a better life or they could have more things if they want. But yeah, priorities is where I got all out of whack. And so getting family first, God first, family, and just living for him, just like my business, as it starts to grow and get a little bit bigger, it's like, okay, well now you gotta do all this stuff, taxes, numbers.
You got a whole other list to do.
Stuff that I'm not good with. And I pray, like, I'm like, God, just give me easy signs. Like, please, because I'm stupid. You know what I mean? Like, I'll miss them. And, like, the people that he's put in my life, like, that I've come in, like, a lot of retired teachers. So we homeschool our kids, but they're getting poured into and learning more by not being in school. Because, I mean, the schools.
Learning the right lessons that you'd like to teach them to be able to get into the adult life, not just what the government wants everybody to know.
And like a lot of stuff, I think too, for me as a kid was hidden from me because like, oh, you're too young to know or whatever. But it's like, I mean, and I'll share this, but my wife, they found a lump in her breast or whatever. And like, that would be something that most parents want to hide from their kids.
Correct. And
I'm like, no, we need to let them know. And then we need to pray about it as a family.
And that way, hearing it early and often, if it ever ends up being a worst case scenario, they're prepared for it. It wasn't just like out of the blue. Where did this happen?
Yeah. But it was like that way when we pray for it and you go back and it's nothing, they can understand what the power of prayer can do. Like they can see that kind of stuff. I mean, I remember I wasn't allowed to go to my dad's funeral because I think I was like 8 or something.
They didn't want you to see that.
Yeah. But like, I want to be fully transparent with my kids on all that kind of stuff, and so they can learn from it. I think that's important. If you don't see or you don't experience, then you don't know. And then there's a lot of things that I'm still like, I'll figure out like business wise, like, where it's like, oh, I didn't know that. Well, now that I know that, I need to make sure I do it the right way. Like, so God's not going to glorify my business, especially when it's a God first business, if I'm trying to like snake around taxes or like say I only want this much insurance because like this is what you're supposed to do. It's like, but God's placed these business people and like this accountant, all these godly people in my life that are like, this is what you need to do. This is godly. This is, and it's like, okay. And so like they dangle a carrot, I go chomp the carrot, and then what's the next carrot? You know what I mean? So it's grown into, 2 years in business in January, and it's been a lot of fun too,
That, I think that is the key factor to continuing to be a successful business in climate. You have to enjoy what you're doing, especially in the detailing world. If you don't enjoy it and treat it as a job, that passion isn't going to come through in the results. And I think that's the biggest difference between this shop and a lot of other shops around here is that, yeah, they can learn it, they can do it, they'll get the business, but the passion isn't there. And everybody wonders how this shop got so big so fast. Everybody enjoys it.
Well, and I'll say this, like from looking at your posts and stuff, it's like you go above and beyond like the services that you're charging for. And that's what I always try and do too, is like there's the people out there that just want to make the money and they do a very shortcut way.
Exactly what the list says.
Yeah, a shortcut way. They'll do it the quick way. And there is no quick way when you're living for God. I'll put it that way. Like when they came out of Egypt, there was like a shortcut one way, and then there's this long way that trapped them by the water. You know what I mean? And it's like, how often would we have chose to go the shortcut? But like, you got to be comfortable being uncomfortable, and you got to do the hard things. And the stuff
if it's not difficult, you're not learning.
Right. And it's like, and when you go above and beyond and you see the customer's face when they get their car back and like that right there.
Yeah. Well, you got to kind of experience a pickup today before we started this. It was that was it. It could have been the smallest detail. Mm-hmm. It was, we spent 10 hours on the paint of her Jeep. And the one thing she said, and all she talked about were fender flares. Yeah. Like just how clean the fender flares were.
Yep.
And it just takes one small thing to kind of flip that whole experience.
She does off-roading. Those fender flares were beat up. She probably thought she was going to have to buy new ones. They're expensive.
Yeah, the metal ones, yeah.
You were able to bring them back to life, and so, that's like on a Jeep, there's not very much paint.
Well, that was it. And she wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
And that's what makes the difference.
So going above and beyond and not just out to get the quick buck or taking advantage of customers, or like upselling when they don't need it, and literally just providing exemplary service. You know what I mean?
We've sold a lot of jobs where it's like, you really don't need that. Like, let's do this.
Yeah. I actually had a customer come in that wanted me to coat something, and they had just bought the car from Hyundai. And I know that probably Hyundai coatings aren't the best, but this, like the fender wells.
If they're happy with it, that's what
matters. It was just like, I was like, this came coated already, and it's performing pretty decent for like a dealership like coating. It wasn't like a Chevy coating or anything. It was like
not the old 55-gallon spray drum.
No, it's not like the snake oil stuff. But yeah, that bothers me too. Is like when they put it
$3,000-$4,000 in the financing, spending 8% interest on.
Yeah, they put it in their financing and say it's ceramic coated, and then they bring it to me, and I'm like, this thing just has spray wax on it. So, but yeah, doing stuff the right way, seeing the results. Lost my train of thought where I was going with that, but
going above and beyond. And then we were talking about people doing the unexpected and not taking a shortcut.
Yes. Yeah. So it's, anytime I get kind of uncomfortable or like, I don't want to do that. It's like when I do it, like I said, it's always like we'll have a slow week or whatever it is. And it's like, all right, well, instead of sitting here and trying to clean the shop more or create work, let's go serve at this JH Outback thing, which is like
do something for the community.
Yeah, like which is like the Emmaus thing, but it's where instead of it being for you and the Lord, like to figure out where you're at, now you can go with your wife and have that same experience together. It's like catered, or you could go with your daughter, or you could go with your son. And it's like I was able to share my testimony there, but it was like we had a really slow week, and it was like there's a reason why it's slow. Let's all go serve there. Because like there's tons of stuff to set up beforehand, and like the people that are in charge of that get super overwhelmed. Like the devil tries to attack right before that, like, and you know, tensions get high and all that. So it's like we just went and served as a shop. Like I set up like I don't know 170 chairs or something like that. Like whatever we could do, and then you know that next week more cars than I could pretty much handle.
That's kind of how we ended up this past week. Is we had a pretty slow winter as far. I mean, we have a big shop to fill, so our slow weeks are 4 or 5 coating jobs. I mean, we need to be slow, and we had 12 cars in here.
Thursday, I think we had like 10 or 12 that was sitting in here, including 3 or 4 in the other building.
Yeah, so it was pretty overwhelming from going really slow to just like overwhelmed.
Yeah, that's awesome too. Like I mean, you have the tent, the PPF, the wrap, like you have everything. Like we just started out mobile, and we have like the ceramic coating stuff, which is, you know, I came up here and saw you, which a lot of people say that they want to come see you and all that stuff, and never.
We had that conversation. It's like everybody's like, hey, I'll come by the shop.
Yeah,
never. I think you're the first person since I've been at this location that's ever been like, yeah, I'm gonna come up and see you from somewhere out of state, not like across town, but a couple hours away, and it's like you're the first person that's like, all right, you're here.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you gotta, like I said, you gotta make time to, if you want to succeed, you gotta make time to go do the things that need to be done to be able to succeed. You can't.
And that's where I see a lot of people in this industry downfall is they try to learn it themselves. Like, oh, I don't need help. I can learn how to do this. I'll figure it out. You take one class, that could put you a year ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always down to, like, my way isn't always the right way. Like I can learn, if I can learn something new, I'm going to. Like it's not my way or the highway. Like I'm sure there's a better way to do a lot of things that I do, and once I find out what they are, then I implement them.
Yep.
So it's just about
it's just like growing. When I train some of these guys, like I don't train many people anymore. We have enough guys here in place we have people that train new guys. But when something comes up that we haven't encountered very often, we'll step in. Well, I went with Clint's here right now. Is a couple of weeks ago we dealt with an issue on the side of a truck that he hadn't himself experienced. And I was like, sit down, let's go through this. And it gives me the opportunity to train something that I've gone through that they don't go through very often.
Yeah. And
it kind of sits it in there. And if it comes up again, he knows what to do.
Yeah. But then so just watching all your Facebook stuff and all that, and then being like, and I know G-Technic from when I would get cars, because I would get the DuPont registry.
Yep.
That's where I got the 67 Camaro out of. So I'm like, I knew that was like the best.
And G-Technic's been around since 2001. Not many people know that.
Yeah.
Because coatings have been popular in the last 5 or 6 years, but they don't realize they've been around 20 years.
Yeah. And like, I'm not very smart when it comes to like being able to explain that kind of stuff, but I just know that it is a phenomenal product. Like I nerd out on it. Like it is like, what? Like it's insane what you can do with paint and cars. And like I said, like just like I was all tore up and beat up and God changed me, and I love being able to work on cars. Like I don't have the distractions of owning the cars. They're other people's cars. I get to make them look awesome, see their reaction, share a little bit about what God's done in my life, and maybe it cheers them up, and they're leaving with a clean car. So I just hit the mic spring. It's very sensitive. But no, just blessed that you were willing to take the time to even help me get set up with G-Technic.
So that's what a lot of people don't realize around here is I have this reputation around here. I'm an asshole owner. It's not necessarily that. It is if you ask people, but I've built this business to be a specialized service. Like you're coming here for a reason. It's not the customer is always right, has always been that how we grew up. Like you get into the service industry and stuff like that. It's like you're here for my knowledge and what I would suggest. Great. Don't try to downgrade that to get a discount, and that's what really kind of flips my lid. So
yeah, like don't be like, I watched a YouTube video and this is like, okay,
well, great. Why are you doing it?
Yeah. I mean, the machines and the experience is what you're paying
well,
for.
it's just like baseball. It's expensive machines don't mean anything. You can
Right.
go to Harbor Freight right now, get $60 and
Yeah.
still do the same
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
as long as you have the knowledge.
Yep. It's so true. Yeah. I mean, it definitely can be used as a tool to help with efficiency, but you don't need it to get the
Yeah,
results.
and that's all it is. Once you get to a business, at least this size or our size, where you have multiple cars, multiple people, efficiency is a big thing. But if you're just starting out and trying to learn, you don't need a $600 polisher.
Mm-hmm.
But you're definitely a story that has highlighted the name of this podcast as far as climbing the ladder, because you've climbed one, fallen off one, and climbed it again,
Dude,
and then completely went to a different style ladder.
just straight nosedive
Yeah.
off of one. Yeah. No, but I have to give all the glory to God. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that he's real. Like I said, I had a doctor, I had a lawyer. They're like, you should be dead and you shouldn't have a leg. And so for the Major League Hospital guy to say that, like, there's a reason why I'm here. And, I made God a promise that I would tell everybody. So any chance I get, when somebody says, hey, do you want to do this or do that? I'm like, yep. And then it's like, well, I'm running a business. I can't leave my business and like this or that. It's not gonna, they need me, like, type thing.
Yeah.
But the thing is no, if you put him first, he'll provide.
Where's your priority going to
Yeah.
be? Yeah.
You put him first, you will have everything that you need. And like, for me, it's like, as long as I have a roof over my head and my family's head and can feed them, like, we don't have anything. We're way happier than we were when we had everything that the world says that you should have. So, and I'm not doing the business to try and do that over again. I'm doing the business.
Well, you're enjoying life, and it's bringing in what life's giving you. It's not like, oh, I need more. Oh, I need this.
Yeah.
It's I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and your bills are paid. Like, that's
it.
You got time with your family. They're not locked in a room. You're not a continent away.
Yeah. And I'm able to be the hands and feet and not be the dirty rag. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sucking people into a life of, like, where it's dead ends. I'm letting them know that there's hope. I think a lot of times we just get stuck.
And that's why I think people need to hear stories like this, that they don't realize how many falls you take to really get up to where you need to be.
Yeah.
And it's doable. You just have to keep going. That the never quit mindset of this whole thing is kind of what every successful person that I've ever met has that in common, is even if you're successful and you get to the point where you're trying to make, you still feel like it's not good enough. So you're always working. And that's the biggest thing that I've noticed.
Yeah. And I think that has a lot to do with the profession we were in, like, because we never did feel good enough.
Well, people tell you you're not good enough too. So
yeah, exactly.
There's that.
Yeah, you have that, and then but no, I'm just super blessed that you asked me to be on here and to be able to share.
Well, I appreciate it worked
your
out.
Family,
yeah, I appreciate
kids,
it worked out. Kids have been inseparable. I mean, I don't know how that happened. They've met once.
Yeah, once before, and then like, missed each other to the point when I came back this time, they've just been like, and it's that's just a blessing too. Like, to be able to have friends, people that you can count on. That's the one thing that, when you surround yourself by good people that are living the right way.
It's that circle of friends. You have to surround yourself with the right people to stay on track.
That's it.
One bad apple will kill it.
Yeah. You can get in a wrong crowd for sure, or you can just start to hang out with the wrong people or get complacent, and next thing you know, you're not being held accountable. And if you're not being held accountable by somebody, then you're gonna find out real quick. And I mean, I got a second chance. That's why, and more than a second chance, but I got like a legit second chance.
You got a whole other ladder.
And not many people do, and I didn't. That was the biggest thing I struggled with was how am I going to reach people that
And I
were
think
like
that's
me?
the biggest thing to learn from people that are going through this is second chances are rare. Take the opportunities while you can. Like if that's in front of you and
Mhm.
it's a path where you want to go, but you think it's too hard, just try it.
Yeah.
Because you're in a worse. What's going to happen if you fail and try it? You're in the same spot you're in.
Yep.
You know
Well,
what I mean?
I actually talked to Pastor Jeff at First Baptist Opelika, where we go to church. He's a car guy, by the way. It's his love language, which I was like, that's not a coincidence, right? Like, but somebody was like, you need to start a Sunday school class. And I was like, bro, like, you know how many people would laugh out loud if they knew I was teaching a Sunday school class that like used
That
to
knew
know
you
me?
in that life, yeah.
And he was basically just like, hey, if a door opens, walk through it. If it shuts, praise him in the hallway. And it's like, man, it just hit home.
So when's your first class?
Well, I mean, God's timing's perfect, and that hasn't all played out yet. But I mean, I feel it. Like, talking to people and stuff like that. It's I need to work on myself more. Obviously, I need to get in the Word more, to know more, because you don't want to mess that up. You know what I mean? You don't want to say something that's not going to be correct. So it's a lot of responsibility, but at the same time, that's what we have to do. We have to make each other better. We have iron sharpens iron, always be willing to learn new stuff and take the chances. Like when
never think you know it all. Never think you're done learning.
Well, you're always replaceable.
Everything. Everybody.
People will be like, well, if I go from my work, like, no, somebody can stand and do exactly what you're doing right now. But yeah, I'm just super pumped for your podcast.
I appreciate you coming by. I told you from the beginning, I was like, I haven't done this very long. It's kind of new to me, so I'm learning as we go. And I was like, 30 minutes an hour would be okay. I think our second half of this is now an hour and a half, so I'm not sure how long this episode is going to be. But after editing, it's going to be informative for some people.
Yeah.
Going from young and dumb kids to professional athletes to business owners, kind of in the same finishing line but different paths.
Yeah, and I'm just like I said, I'm blown away by the amount of stuff that you can see when your eyes are open. Like when you follow through with stuff, like like I've met people that's like, I don't want to go to this, or I don't want to do this. Meet them. Next thing you know, like a month later, I'll meet somebody else and they're like, oh, they told me about you.
Yeah.
And it's like, so you made an impression and it was a good one.
And you had no idea. It's like, he doesn't even care. Yeah.
No clue. And so like, and then it just keeps happening. And so it just makes me want to double down, triple down in what I'm doing, because it's the right cause,
Well, but I mean, that can happen in kids too. Like you say Sunday school, but you say one thing and it could just click in somebody's head and they remember that forever.
Yep. Yeah. And then they might try it on their own, like I did. But if they're lucky enough to make it through, God has a purpose for everybody, and everybody has a testimony, and everybody needs to, sometimes you just gotta put what people are going to think about you and stuff to the side, because they're going through, there's people going through stuff that if they could just share what they're going through with somebody else, that person's going through the same thing. Next thing you know, it's like, oh, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we go through this life.
You think you're alone, and then you run into somebody that's gone through the same thing.
Yeah. And next thing you know, you can help each other. And it's love, man. It's awesome. And your family has shown my family nothing but love, and we appreciate it. And look forward
without you guys coming
here.
up here, I wouldn't be doing anything today.
Yeah. Well, you'd be not listening to the rain on the metal roof.
Yeah.
It
actually lightened up. That was nice.
Yeah.
But it was heavy there for a minute.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you coming by this weekend, and I'm sure we'll be back down to Alabama, and we'll do this again in the better half of the year and kind of have a recap and see what's going on in your shop.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing too. You came down to my shop to help out, and help train me. So, I mean, that's not something that usually a lot of people do.
That I don't do that.
Yeah. But no, just blessed to be part of another family. You know, God's place in my life. Even meeting this guy right here.
Yeah, Clint's been in the background the whole time for people that are listening. He's one of our techs here at Finishing Touch. He's kind of the unofficial producer as he's helping us with lights and cameras right now.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. No, he's you know, he has passion. You can see it. So that's awesome.
But if we can inspire one person listening to this, even if it's 5 viewers, if it means changing one person to take that opportunity, that's all I wanted to do this for. It gives me something to do outside of kind of what I've focused on the last 8 years with this business. Is it gives me the opportunity to tell my story and meet other interesting individuals, like Frank last week, attack helicopter pilot for episode 1. Let's
go.
Let's start it off with a bang. But then we go into professional baseball, and I'm not sure what episode we got coming up. We have a NASCAR driver. I'm not going to release that information yet. Some of you that know me probably know who it is. It's a local guy around here.
That's cool.
But he's Cup and Xfinity driver. We're going to get into kind of professional sports and the politics of NASCAR and coming up through that mess.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was just a foolish man is right in his own mind, but a wise man seeks counsel.
Yeah.
It's a verse that's kind of stood out to me, and I used to not care what other people think and just make decisions, you know, and big decisions.
You can do it.
Yeah. And now, like, you know, I seek counsel from people with more wisdom, like when it comes to car detailing or any of that stuff that I have, or businesses.
And I mean, I was like that in baseball. It was, I've been so good my whole life. What are you going to teach me?
Right. So it's going through life trying to get wisdom from wisdom from the Bible, wisdom from people, from older people. And I feel like that a lot of that has kind of been like, people don't really look to older people for advice anymore. And like, I found out
some slow 80-year-old man walking across the street. Well, he's 80 years old. He's gone through more than you could ever imagine.
Exactly. So, and yeah, I mean, there's a stat out there that people over 60 is like the suicide rate has gone up like exponentially since COVID, but that's because you weren't allowed to see them.
Yeah.
And then with the phones and stuff nowadays, everybody thinks they know it all. And it's like, no, you need to get
internet's dangerous.
You need to get well. It is.
Somebody needs you need to get punched in the face again at least once.
Yeah, and just like analytics in baseball, it's like, too much of anything is dangerous. It can be used as a tool, but if you use it to an end all be all, like you're going to get in trouble.
Yeah. But I think we're coming up on 2.5 hours right now, so we'll probably end it here. We had a pretty long ride here, going from baseball to broken legs to business, and I think we're in 2023 now. I'm not sure. 24.
24.
Yeah. So we'll end it here. We'll be back down at your shop, and we appreciate you coming on.
Yep, absolutely. I appreciate it. Yeah.
As we close this chapter, I encourage you to keep climbing, keep pushing beyond your limits, and keep believing in your ability to overcome whatever obstacles stand in your way. Until next time, keep striving, keep reaching, and keep climbing the ladder to success. We'll see you next week.